He saved the Apache chief's son. The next day, 20 brides arrived at his door. Choose one. Only those who learned patience and hard work could survive. In a small wooden cabin near the edge of Apache land lived a man who kept to himself. People in nearby settlements knew him as a quiet helper. He fixed broken tools, guided lost travelers, and traded fairly. He never asked too many questions, and he never spoke badly of anyone. Most people did not know his past, and he never tried to explain it. Every morning he woke before sunrise. He fetched water, checked his small garden, and cared for his horse. His life followed a simple pattern. He did not seek trouble, and he did not expect rewards. He believed that if a man did what was right, that was enough. Living close to Apache land was dangerous, but he respected their territory. He never crossed their paths unless necessary, and when he did, he showed respect. One afternoon, while returning from a trading post, he noticed something unusual near a rocky path. His horse suddenly slowed, sensing something wrong. The man looked ahead and saw marks on the ground, signs of struggle. He stopped, listening carefully. The wind carried a weak sound, almost like breathing mixed with pain. His heart tightened. He followed the sound carefully, stepping off his horse. Behind a large rock he found a boy lying on the ground. The boy was young, no more than 14 or 15. His clothes were torn and blood stained his side. His face was pale and his breathing was shallow. From the boy's clothing and symbols, the man knew immediately this was an Apache child. Helping him could bring serious danger. If Apache warriors found the boy dead, they might blame the nearest outsider. If they found him alive in the care of a stranger, they might still see it as a threat. The man stood there for a moment, caught between fear and conscience. He could turn away. No one would know. This land was full of stories where people looked the other way to survive. But when the boy's eyes slowly opened and met his, something changed. There was fear there, but also a quiet plea. The boy tried to speak, but no words came. The man lowered himself slowly, keeping his movements calm. "Easy," he said softly, though he wasn't sure the boy understood. He checked the wound carefully. It was deep, likely from a blade or sharp object, but it was not beyond help. The man tore a piece of cloth from his own shirt and pressed it gently against the wound to stop the bleeding. He knew he had to make a decision quickly. Night would come soon, and the land was not safe after dark. Carefully, he lifted the boy and placed him on his horse. The boy was light, but the weight of the decision felt heavy. The man led the horse away from the main trail, choosing a path few people knew. Every sound made him alert. Every shadow seemed like a watcher. By the time they reached the cabin, the sky was turning orange. The man brought the boy inside and laid him on his own bed. He cleaned the wound using water he had saved and herbs he had learned to use over the years. His hands moved steadily, though his mind raced. If Apache warriors came, he did not know how they would react. Still, he worked carefully, doing everything he could to help the boy survive the night. As darkness settled, the boy drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes he whispered words in his own language. The man did not understand them, but he listened anyway. He kept the fire low and the door locked. Outside, the land felt tense, as if it was holding its breath. Late that night, the boy woke fully for the first time. His eyes were clearer now, though pain still showed on his face. He looked around the cabin, confused and afraid. The man slowly stepped into view, making sure not to scare him. He offered the boy water. After a moment, the boy accepted it with shaking hands. "You're safe here," the man said simply. The boy studied him carefully. Then, in broken common words, he spoke. "You helped me." "Yes," the man replied. "I found you hurt. I could not leave you." The boy nodded slowly. After a pause, he said something that made the man freeze. He spoke his name and then another name spoken with deep respect. The man recognized that name. It belonged to the Apache chief, a leader known across the region. His heart dropped. This was not just any boy. This was the chief's son. Fear crept into the man's chest, but he did not let it show. He nodded again. "Rest," he said. "You need strength." Outside, unseen eyes were already searching the land. Apache warriors had noticed the boy's absence. Tracks were being followed. The night was not silent, it was waiting. The man sat near the fire, holding his rifle but hoping he would not need it. He did not plan to fight. He only planned to protect the boy until morning. If the chief came, he would face him honestly. Hours passed slowly. The wind howled and distant sounds echoed through the hills. The man did not sleep. He checked the boy's wound often, relieved to see the bleeding had slowed. Just before dawn, the boy finally slept peacefully. As the first light touched the land, the man stepped outside. Fresh tracks surrounded his cabin. They were close, very close. He took a deep breath and stood tall. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. He had done what he believed was right. And in this land, sometimes that single choice could change everything. The first light of dawn touched the hills with a soft golden glow, painting the land in colors that seemed almost peaceful. But for the man, there was no peace. Last night had been long, full of tension and uncertainty. He had done what he believed was right. He had saved the Apache chief's son. But he knew that right and safe were not always the same thing. Now the question weighed heavily on him. Would the chief understand his actions, or would he see the stranger as a threat? Inside the cabin, the boy was still asleep. His breathing was steady, but the man could not rest. He prepared water and a small meal, knowing that when the boy woke, he would need strength. He thought carefully about how to handle the coming encounter. He had no weapons for offense, only his rifle for defense. But he hoped it would never come to that. The morning air was cool, carrying the scent of dry grass and distant trees. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. From the edge of the clearing, a group of riders appeared. Their horses moved with skill and quiet strength. The man recognized the markings immediately. These were Apache warriors, and at their center rode a figure taller and broader than the others, the chief himself. The man's heart beat faster, but he did not panic. He opened the cabin door slowly, stepping into the light. The warriors stopped their horses a short distance away, their eyes fixed on him. The chief dismounted with calm authority. He moved toward the cabin, his eyes never leaving the stranger. There was no rush, no anger in his pace, only careful observation. The man set the boy upright and explained, "He is hurt. I found him last night. I helped him." The boy, still weak, nodded. "He helped me," he said softly. The chief studied both of them. For a long moment there was only silence. Then he spoke in his own language, low and deliberate. The warriors watched the stranger, but there was no attack. The man did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was cautious, testing, yet not hostile. He gestured to the boy. "He will live," he said simply. The chief's eyes softened slightly. He knelt beside his son, feeling the wound with a gentle touch that revealed the bond between them. The boy's eyes brightened at the sight of his father, but fear lingered. The chief looked back at the stranger, and for the first time the man noticed a flicker of respect. The chief spoke again, this time using broken words that the man could understand. "You help my son." "Why?" The man straightened. "Because he needed help. Because it was the right thing to do. I did not expect anything in return." The chief studied him carefully, as if measuring his words against the truth of his actions. Then slowly he nodded. He motioned for his warriors to relax. The tension in the clearing eased slightly. The man stepped back, uncertain. He had acted without thought of reward or recognition, and now he realized the weight of what he had done. Saving the chief's son was not simply a good deed. It was a dangerous act that could have cost him everything. Yet here he stood, unharmed, and the chief seemed to acknowledge the courage it had taken. The boy, now sitting beside his father, whispered something in his own language. The chief replied with a calm voice, then turned to the man. "You stay," he said. "You are safe with us now." The man nodded, still unsure of what this meant. He had expected anger, perhaps even punishment, but instead he found acceptance. It was a rare thing in these lands where trust was earned slowly and cautiously. Over the next few hours, the chief and the man spoke carefully. The man explained how he had found the boy and how he had cared for him through the night. The chief listened, asking few questions but observing everything. It became clear that actions spoke louder than words. The stranger had risked his life for a boy who was not his own, and that truth could not be ignored. As the sun climbed higher, the warriors prepared to return to their village with the boy. The chief turned to the man. "You saved my son. You honorable. We remember this." "Always." The man bowed his head slightly, not used to praise. "I only did what I could," he said. The chief studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded again and gestured for the warriors to follow him. The group rode away, the boy safe at the center, and the man watched until they disappeared over the horizon. For the next few days, life returned to its quiet routine, but the man felt different. He had crossed an invisible line, moving from stranger to someone remembered, someone trusted. Every day he thought about the boy and the chief, wondering if he would ever see them again. Then one morning, as he was repairing a fence, he saw riders approaching from the same direction the chief had left. His heart skipped a beat, but these riders were different. They rode slowly, without weapons drawn, yet with purpose. He dismounted and watched as the lead rider approached. To his surprise, it was the boy himself, riding beside his father. But behind them, he noticed something extraordinary, other figures moving steadily on horseback. The man could not yet understand, but a sense of anticipation filled the air. The chief dismounted again, walking toward him. He spoke clearly this time in words the man could understand. "You saved my son. You are family. We bring gift, choice." The man's eyes widened. "Choice?" he asked, confused. The chief nodded, and behind him the figures became clearer. There were 20 young women, all dressed in fine, traditional clothing, each one strong and proud. They were part of the chief's people, carefully selected. The man could hardly believe his eyes. The chief continued, "You choose. 1. To honor your courage, your heart, our people show respect. This is our way. You choose one bride." The man's mind spun. He had never acted for reward, and yet here was a gift beyond imagining. 20 women, each chosen by a chief to honor a stranger who had risked his life. He felt overwhelmed. He did not know what to say, what to do. The boy, now fully recovered, smiled faintly at him, then looked to his father. The chief nodded once more, affirming the man's choice. The message was clear. This was not a reward for wealth or power, but for courage, kindness, and respect. The man stood silently, taking in the scene. His life, once quiet and predictable, had been changed forever by a single act of courage. Saving a boy had earned him something more than he could have imagined: a bond between people, a bridge between worlds, and a responsibility he could not ignore. As the sun set behind the hills that evening, he realized that trust, once earned, could open doors no one expected. And in this land, where survival was never guaranteed, that trust was more valuable than gold. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine and dry earth. The man stood at the edge of his cabin, staring across the clearing. His heart still raced from the events of the past few days. He had saved the Apache chief's son, and that act had already changed his life in ways he could not fully understand. He had returned to his routines, feeding his horse, tending his small garden, repairing tools. But now there was a tension in the air, an expectation he could feel in every sound and movement around his cabin. Then, on the horizon, he saw movement. At first he thought it was a small group of travelers, but as they drew closer, he realized this was no ordinary procession. The riders moved with purpose and precision, their horses steady and controlled. His pulse quickened. The Apache chief had returned, but this time he was not alone. 20 young women rode alongside him, each on her own horse. They were dressed in traditional clothing, adorned with colors and patterns that showed their strength and standing within the tribe. The man had never seen anything like it. The chief dismounted gracefully and signaled for the man to come closer. The young women followed, keeping their distance but watching carefully. Their expressions were calm and composed, yet he could sense the curiosity in their eyes. They were proud, confident, and strong, yet also gentle in a way that spoke of respect and discipline. The man could hardly believe what he was seeing. He had saved a child, and now he was being asked to choose one of 20 women as a bride. He stepped forward slowly, unsure what to say or how to act. He had lived alone for so long that the idea of choosing a partner was foreign to him. But he remembered the reason he had acted, to help a boy in need, without expecting anything in return. Now the consequence of that simple act was placed before him, and he felt both honored and overwhelmed. The chief spoke in his language first, then in careful words that the man could understand. "You helped my son. You risked your life for him. You are honest, brave, and kind. This is how we honor those who act with courage. These women, they are offered to you. Choose one. She will become your wife. This is our tradition, our gift." The man looked at the women, trying to take them in one by one. Each of them had her own story written on her face, in the way they carried themselves, in the quiet strength that shone through their eyes. Some were serious, others shy, but all had dignity. He did not know how he could possibly choose. One of the women stepped forward slightly. She bowed her head politely but did not speak. The man noticed the calm confidence in her movements, the steady gaze that seemed to measure him. He felt drawn to her in a way he could not explain, yet he knew he could not act on impulse. This choice was not just for him, it was for her life, and for the bond between his people and the Apache tribe. The chief spoke again. "Do not rush. Learn their names. Listen to their stories. Choose with your heart, not your fear." The man nodded. He spent the next hours speaking with each woman, learning about their lives, their families, their hopes, and their skills. One spoke of her love for horses and her skill with riding and tracking. Another told of her care for the sick and her knowledge of herbs. Another shared stories of her people's history and traditions. Each story added weight to the decision he had to make. As the sun climbed higher, the man realized the choice would not be easy. He felt the responsibility of it keenly. This was not a reward or a prize to be taken lightly. It was a life he would share, a bond that could not be broken. He understood that the woman he chose would become not just a partner, but a guide, a teacher, and a bridge between worlds. He also noticed the boy, the chief's son, watching quietly from a safe distance. The child had grown stronger in the days since his rescue, and his eyes reflected gratitude and trust. The man felt the weight of that trust as he considered his decision. Choosing one woman meant respecting the others, ensuring their safety and dignity, and honoring the chief's tradition. Hours passed as he continued to learn from each of the women. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land. Finally, he stepped back and took a deep breath. He had listened, observed, and reflected. He had weighed the strength, kindness, and character of each woman, and now he knew. He approached the woman who had first caught his attention, the one with the steady gaze and quiet confidence. She met his eyes and nodded slightly, acknowledging his presence. He spoke clearly, choosing his words with care. "I wish for you to share your life with me. Will you come with me?" The woman's eyes shone with a mixture of pride and understanding. She stepped forward and placed her hand in his. The connection between them was simple yet profound. It was not built on wealth, power, or fame. It was built on respect, courage, and shared values. The chief watched silently, then nodded with approval. The other women remained composed, showing respect for the choice made. There were no signs of anger or disappointment, only dignity and understanding. The man realized that this moment was not just about marriage, it was about trust, honor, and the strength of human connection. That evening, the man and the woman he had chosen sat together outside the cabin. The boy, now fully recovered, played nearby, laughing quietly for the first time in days. The man felt a deep sense of peace. He had acted bravely when it mattered, and that courage had brought unexpected rewards. But more importantly, it had created bonds of trust that could last a lifetime. As night fell, the stars appeared in the clear sky above. The man looked at the woman beside him and then at the boy playing near the fire. His life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. Saving a life had led to trust, respect, and a new beginning. And he knew that this was only the start of a journey that would challenge him, teach him, and ultimately shape the man he would become. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of distant fires and the quiet strength of the land. In that moment, the man understood something profound. Courage and kindness, when guided by a good heart, could create connections that no danger, distance, or difference could break. And with that understanding, he felt ready to face whatever the future might hold. The morning sun rose slowly over the hills, painting the land with soft shades of gold and pink. The man stepped outside his cabin, feeling a weight on his shoulders that he could not easily put down. The day had arrived when he would need to make a choice, one that would affect not only his life, but also the lives of 20 women who now stood patiently in front of him. Each of them had been brought by the Apache chief as a sign of respect, and each carried her own story, her own strength, and her own hopes for the future. The man's heart raced as he considered what he had to do. He had always lived alone, following simple rules of survival, hard work, and honesty. He had never thought about choosing a life partner, and now the responsibility felt enormous. He could feel the eyes of the women upon him, some curious, some calm, some shy. Each one waited respectfully, trusting that he would make a decision with care. He decided he could not choose quickly or without understanding them better. He wanted to learn who they were, not just see them as a reward for his courage. He began walking slowly among them, speaking softly, asking their names, their stories, and their dreams. One by one, they shared their lives with him. The first woman spoke of her love for the land. She had grown up running across hills and valleys, learning the ways of her people and the language of nature. She described her skill with horses and her knowledge of the plants that could heal or harm. Her eyes shone with pride and confidence, and the man felt a deep respect for her. The next woman told him about her family. She had cared for her younger siblings, learning responsibility and patience at an early age. She had also learned to sew, cook, and help her community in countless small but important ways. Her calm voice revealed strength, and the man could see the loyalty she carried in her heart. Another spoke of adventure. She had traveled with her people, exploring the land, learning from elders, and discovering hidden streams and paths. Her stories were full of energy and laughter, and the man felt a warmth listening to her. She had a spirit that refused to be held back by fear or hardship. As the hours passed, he listened to each of the women with care. Some had gentle voices, some had fierce determination, but all carried courage in their hearts. He realized that each of them could live a strong, meaningful life with him, and yet he could only choose one. The thought weighed on him heavily. He walked back to the first woman he had noticed, the one who had quietly captured his attention the day before. Her calm confidence had drawn him, but now he understood that every woman had qualities that could inspire him. He did not want to hurt anyone, and he did not want to make a selfish choice. He wanted the decision to be fair, to honor their lives, and to respect the chief's gift. The boy, the chief's son, approached him quietly. He had recovered fully and was now full of energy, his eyes bright and curious. "He helped me," the boy said softly, looking at the man. "You brave." The boy's words reminded the man why he was here. He had acted out of kindness, not expectation, and now that kindness had created a moment of responsibility. The man returned to the women. He asked each one what they hoped for in life, what they valued, and what they wanted from a partner. Their answers were honest and thoughtful. Some spoke of family, others of learning and growing, others of love and trust. The man realized that choosing a life partner was more than selecting someone he liked. It was about shared values, shared hopes, and the ability to support each other through challenges. Time moved slowly. The sun climbed higher and the air grew warm. The women watched him patiently, showing respect for his process. He noticed their gestures, the way they carried themselves, the strength in their eyes, and the kindness in their voices. Each woman had a quiet dignity, a presence that spoke of resilience and courage. Finally, the man took a deep breath. He understood that the decision could not be made lightly. He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the boy he had saved, the trust the chief had placed in him, and the lives of these women. He realized that the choice was not about power, desire, or reward. It was about connection, respect, and shared understanding. He opened his eyes and approached the woman who had first drawn his attention. She met his gaze steadily, her calm confidence unwavering. The man spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "I wish for you to share your life with me," he said. "Will you come with me?" The woman's eyes softened and she smiled gently. She stepped forward and placed her hand in his. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a profound understanding. This was not just an agreement, it was a partnership, a shared commitment to face life together with respect, courage, and trust. The chief watched silently, his expression calm but approving. The other women remained composed, showing dignity and respect for the choice that had been made. There was no anger, no disappointment, only quiet understanding. The man realized that this moment was more than a marriage, it was the beginning of a new bond between people, cultures, and hearts. The man and his chosen companion spent the rest of the day talking quietly, learning about each other, and beginning the first steps of a shared life. The boy played nearby, laughing and running through the clearing. The man felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. He had acted with courage when it mattered, and that courage had brought him trust, friendship, and love. As night fell, the stars appeared in the sky, twinkling over the hills and valleys. The man looked at the woman beside him, then at the boy who had changed everything. He understood something profound. Acts of kindness and bravery, even when small, could create bonds that lasted far longer than fear, anger, or misunderstanding. The wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying the quiet strength of the land. The man felt ready for the future, knowing that with courage, respect, and understanding, he could face whatever challenges came his way. And with that knowledge, he knew he had not only saved a life but had also gained a new family, a new home, and a shared path forward that would shape him. The first light of dawn stretched across the hills, casting long shadows on the land and filling the air with the quiet sounds of birds and wind. The man stood outside his cabin, looking at the woman beside him and the boy who had become the center of his world. Life had changed completely in the days since he had saved the boy, and now, with the bond he had formed, every moment carried new meaning. The land he had once thought of as lonely and quiet now felt alive, full of connection, responsibility, and hope. The boy ran through the clearing, laughing as he chased a small rabbit that darted across the dry grass. The man watched him carefully, making sure he stayed safe, but he also felt joy at the sight. He had risked his life to save this child, and now, seeing him healthy and happy, he understood that the act of kindness had grown into something far greater than he could have imagined. It had created trust, friendship, and family where there had been none. The woman he had chosen moved beside him, carrying water from the small stream nearby. She had settled into the routines of the cabin with grace, helping with cooking, caring for the boy, and learning the ways of the land. Every small act she performed showed her strength, her thoughtfulness, and her ability to create harmony. The man admired her quietly, realizing that their partnership would be built not only on respect, but also on shared responsibility. The Apache chief had visited often since the boy's recovery. Each time, the chief's presence was calm and powerful. He would speak of the land, the people, and the importance of trust and honor. The man listened carefully, learning from him and slowly understanding the traditions of the Apache people. Through these visits, the bond between the chief and the man grew strong. The chief saw that the man's courage had not been reckless but guided by principle and care. In turn, the man learned the value of respect, patience, and the strength of community. Life settled into a new rhythm. Days were filled with work, laughter, and learning. The man and his companion would rise early to care for the animals, tend the small garden, and repair tools or structures. The boy followed them closely, eager to help and learn. Every evening, they would gather around the fire to share stories. The woman taught the boy about the land, its plants, and its traditions. The man taught him skills of survival, patience, and honesty. Together, they created a home where trust, learning, and love were central. Despite the quiet life, the man never forgot the risk he had taken to save the boy. He often thought of how quickly the situation could have turned tragic. But he also realized that it was that choice, the choice to act with courage and kindness, that had shaped everything that followed. He had gained not only trust and friendship, but also a family that respected him for his heart and actions. The boy grew stronger and more confident with each passing day. He learned quickly, guided by both the man and the woman. He rode horses with skill, understood the land and its signs, and began to show qualities that mirrored his father's wisdom. The man felt a quiet pride watching him, knowing that he had played a part in keeping this young life safe and helping him grow. The bond between them was deep, built on trust, care, and shared experiences. The woman he had chosen became more than a companion. She was a teacher, a partner, and a friend. She shared her knowledge of the land, her people, and her culture. She listened to the man's stories of survival and hardship, offering guidance and understanding. Together, they balanced each other, each contributing what the other lacked. Their life became a partnership based on mutual respect, love, and shared responsibility. The Apache chief often visited to check on his son and the family he had entrusted to the man. Each visit reinforced the connection between them. The chief would speak of the importance of honor and courage, and the man would listen humbly, learning lessons that extended far beyond survival. Over time, the chief's respect for the man deepened, not because of strength or skill, but because of integrity, kindness, and the willingness to protect what was valuable to others. Word of the man's courage spread quietly through the surrounding settlements and tribes. People spoke of the stranger who had saved the Apache chief's son and had been honored with the opportunity to choose a companion. But he remained humble. He did not act for recognition or fame. His life remained simple, focused on family, work, and respect for the land. Yet the story of his bravery became an example of how one act of selflessness could change many lives. Seasons passed, and the family grew stronger together. Winter brought challenges, but together they faced the cold, tending fires, storing food, and helping each other survive. Spring brought growth and renewal, with the garden flourishing and the boy learning new skills. Summer brought warmth, long days, and hard work that was shared and rewarding. Autumn painted the hills in gold and red, and the man reflected on the journey that had led to this life. He remembered clearly the day he had found the boy, wounded and alone. At that moment, he had faced a choice, to help or to walk away. Choosing to help had been simple in thought but dangerous in action. That single decision had brought trust, respect, and an entire family into his life. He understood now that courage, combined with kindness, had the power to create lasting bonds that bridged fear, distance, and difference. At night, the man would often sit outside, looking at the stars with the woman and the boy nearby. They would speak quietly of the future, of hopes, and of what they had learned together. The boy would ask questions about courage, honor, and family. The man would answer honestly, sharing lessons from both hardship and survival. The woman would add her guidance, blending knowledge from her people with kindness and patience. Together, they built not only a home but also a legacy of love, respect, and understanding. The man knew that his life had been transformed forever. What began as a simple act of helping a child had grown into something much greater, a life filled with trust, family, and shared purpose. The boy's laughter, the woman's strength, and the chief's respect reminded him daily that courage and kindness could change not only one life but many. And so, the man's days were filled with work, learning, and quiet joy. He and his family faced challenges, celebrated victories, and grew together, stronger with each passing day. The land around them remained wide and often harsh, but it no longer felt lonely. Instead, it was alive with love, respect, and the bonds of trust that had grown from a single selfless act. In the end, the man realized that life's true rewards were not wealth, recognition, or power, but the connections we make, the lives we protect, and the love and respect we earn through courage and kindness. And as the stars shone over the hills and the fire crackled warmly in the cabin, he knew that his choice, to act with heart and honor, had given him a life richer than he had ever imagined, a family bound by trust, and a future full of hope.